Let's go. Let's go. Here we go. Senior Home Business family. How you guys doing today? We got Brittany in the house. Matt here. We're talking about senior placement as usual. Brittany, that's what we come on the Wednesday live show talking about senior placement. We got a great topic for you today. We're going to go through a lot of the positives that people experience in senior living. We're going to go through a lot of the negatives that people experience in senior living. We got percentage breakdowns. We've got an article of a lady that spent almost $1 million, Brittany, on a CCRC. And it looks like she's going to lose most of that money. She might get a third of it back. And then stay with us because we're going to give you 5 powerful probing questions to ask communities, the top 5 that I would see and Brittany would see, I believe, on this. And these go beyond what's the cost, what's the level of care, the basic questions. But we got probing questions that you really can ask. So, Brittany, let's get into it today. We're talking about we put our parents in assisted living. Here's what really happened. And before we get into the topic, the reason why you came to this video, if you want to know more about what Brittany does and what I do on a professional level in terms of what we do every day in placement and helping seniors. And how many leads you get yesterday, Brittany?
8.
Only 8 leads yesterday. That's amazing. I don't know if you can actually survive off that, Brittany. That's 8 leads. That's amazing. So if you want to know more about what we do, you can go down and click down the link down below, and you can actually watch a free webinar. You can buy a 3-day workshop. You can schedule a consultation call, all that good stuff. The other thing I want to tell the audience today that will be forthcoming, there's no link down below, but we will, and I say we, I guess I think of us as the team, Brittany, but I'm flying out to Virginia in September 17th through the 24th. And I'm going to roll out a program that I have been telling people that I can do for the last at least 2 years. Maybe it's 3. I'm bad with time. Maybe it's 3 years. But I can go anywhere in the country, give an opportunity, and get a placement in 7 days. Got to teach you on that in the Senior Pro Academy. And I'm actually going to do that when I go to Virginia. I'm going to work 2 hours a day for 6 days, and I will get a paying client. If you want an opportunity to watch me, you can do that. We'll give you an opportunity to eventually be a landing page that's being created right now. We'll have it done in the next day or 2, and we'll start putting on our videos. You'll start probably seeing an ad on Facebook and all that stuff. But let's get to it, Brittany. What we put our parents in assisted living. Here's what's really happening. And I love this piece here because we've actually been out in the street talking to people. So this information is not just coming from ChatGPT research, but it is coming from articles. It is coming from real life situations that we have talked to people along the way in placement, and as well as being on the street talking to people. I mean, if this lady here, the tie-dye purple lady, I love that conversation. I cannot begin to put that on my YouTube channel because it was one F-bomb after the other. But it was a lot of fun. She's a bartender, you know, hey, it just happens, right? But it was a lot of fun. So I heard a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly out in the street personally. And we talked to a lot of different people. This lady over here with Target bags, she's a nurse. And the other ladies are just caring people. And I heard everything from, man, assisted living's great. My mom she flourished in the community to, oh my gosh, what a horrible experience. I mean, just from everything from A to Z, from left to right, and whatever it may be. But the next one, Brittany, I want to get into, this is the overall sentiment of the research we have done personally on the street with senior placement and research is toward assisted living based on family feedback. It looks like to date, there's like 68% that are having a positive experience. 32 are having a negative experience. We're going to go through each one of these positive and negative experiences. But the positive, I don't know what I thought going into this, Brittany. I thought it would be closer to 50-50. I knew it would be 50-50, but I thought it might be 52-48 because it can be a flip of the coin. Because the reason I say that, if you don't go through a seasoned senior placement agent like Brittany and myself and other people that know what they're doing, or you don't know what you're doing as a caring individual, you just think all assisted living communities are the same, you're kind of rolling the dice. So I thought, I don't know, my own thought was rolling the dice to be closer to 52-48. What's your thoughts on that, Brittany?
Agreed. I thought it'd be closer to 50-50, even just based on my experience. If they do come through a seasoned placement agent and find what we would say is the right fit, I think families have different expectations. And just different experiences overall. A lot of times their loved ones don't want to go, so they're unhappy. So I'd be curious where all this comes from just because. But yeah, I mean, I think I was close to, even my experience is probably 50-50. So I was thinking 50-50.
Yeah, I think people, Sometimes loved ones, families, select a community, and maybe we have done this as senior placement agents. We're not perfect, right? It's not like we, hit 100%, every time we come up to the bat, we hit a home run. But you could get into the community that just mom doesn't vibe with. It just, some seniors are rubbing her the wrong way. The staff could be great. The caregiving could be great. She's just not connecting with anybody. It could be as simple as that. But let's get into the positives first, because we're positive mindseted people. We want to get into the positive first and kind of build you up in terms of assisted living. And then we'll get into the negatives. And don't forget about those 5 powerful probing questions that we'll get into as well. But the top positives that have come out, and there's a whole bunch of them here broken up in this pie. We're going to hit on the top 3. It looks like you can split that pie, Brittany, right down the middle. And you got safety and security, you got access to professional care, and then 16% socialization and activities. These are seemingly the top 3 that people really enjoy. Safety and security, I get. I mean, we all want mom to be safe. We all want her to be secure, right? We don't want her living by herself. We don't want her being, because she's prone to falling and maybe leaving the stove on or whatever it may be, or certain ADLs that are not being attended to. We want her to be in a safe and secure environment, right? Brittany, when talking about the communities that you deal with, I mean, what measures do they go to make sure that it is safe and secure? And the reason I ask this question is because, some of these communities will lock their door at 8:00 at night. I've seen some lock their doors a little bit later on. I've seen care homes that I do a lot of business with. They have issues like they could handle caregiving wise with levels of dementia. However, let's say the garage door, they have issues with licensing because it's supposed to be a locked door, right? With dementia, that's why you go in these large communities, you got a little keypad you hit, it's secure. However, when they have the fire department come out and they inspect the home, they want them to reverse that lock because that's not the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be keeping people out of your house, not people from leaving your house. But when it comes to dementia, it's just the opposite. So care homes do have an issue with this sometimes. I don't know how they overcome it, other than one care home actually just switches the lock every time whoever shows up. So if it's licensing shows up, the lock's on the outside. If it's fire department, it's on the inside. I have no idea. But what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's anything from like secured front doors, even to 24-hour security guards that go around the property and stay in the property. I've seen things like having a front desk or a concierge on top of the caregivers there 24/7, like an overnight security guard. That also helps if pendants go off or if they need some just assistance checking on people. I've seen a lot. I mean, gated, where it's gated to even get in, but I think a lot of it too is just safety of the loved ones being there. So the pendants, the 24-hour caregivers, if they're in memory care, the secured unit, secured courtyards where they can still go outside but not leave the building, which I think is really neat for even assisted living to be able to go into centralized courtyards where they're not exposed to whether it be a busy road, that somewhere next to a highway, just who knows. So I've seen that. I think a lot of the times, though, maybe this is referring to also just like the thought of your loved one being somewhere that there's someone there for them 24/7. So if they have a fall, they can press a button. If they don't see them for a couple hours, they're stopping by their room or their apartment to make sure they're okay. In care homes, they're so small, they could probably hear if somebody falls or needs help. They could just say, hey, I need help. And, the caregiver could be right there. So I think the families get a really good feeling of, okay, someone is with my loved one 24/7. It might not be by their side, but they're there if they need them.
Yeah. And I think with memory care, I think a lot of the communities that I deal with, at least the ones I've seen, the courtyard out back in that area, they'll have like an 8-foot wall, right? It may need to be higher because the community I used to work for, a gentleman actually scaled that 8-foot wall and went down to the convenience store and endangered his life. Fortunately, nothing happened negative. The executive director went down there and picked him up and brought him back. However, it is 8 feet, might not be the right, might be closer to 10. All this guy did was go, because I inquired about it because it happened in the middle of the night. I wasn't there. So I asked about it, and I guess evidently he just brought a chair over there. So he gave him an extra 2 feet or whatever. And then he was just, he's probably 6 foot tall. He stretched out his arms and he just pulled himself up and he just went. So that might be an issue. But access to professional care, you're mentioning that. And then 16% socialization and activities that people like and appreciate. I know I get a lot of people moving into independent communities That's what really they appreciate. That is kind of like the in all, far as what they're going to choose a community by. Like if anybody walks into an independent community and there's nothing going on, they're probably not going to go there, right? But even for assisted living communities and memory care, I see communities that spend extra concentrated time with activities and making sure the seniors are connecting. It is you want it to be a community. I mean, obviously it sells good for the communities themselves when families walk in, but I think as a loved one, as a senior placement agent, you're helping someone, it makes you feel good that you're actually encouraging a community that is safe and secure, that is providing professional care, but also activities. Have you seen any unique activities lately, Brittany, out there that you want to mention?
Yeah, I saw one, I think I might have mentioned this before, but it was still pretty recent. They were doing kind of like, I don't know what to describe it, like the kids' toys with blocks, basically kind of blocks, but they were making robots. Like they were, I don't know, they were just like making robots and they got to dictate what they did. So it was like a story thing. It was really cool. They had like these little blocks and they were drawing faces on them and they were kind of like paper, but I don't know what it was. It was really neat, but they were naming them, like telling them what they would do. One was said like, my superpower robot will become invisible. It was just super creative and super fun. And it was, some people do think those are more childlike things, but it was really cool to see adults do that and have different takes on it. And there was people that were engineers in the past, just their brain, just watching them tick and like get to know all those things. So I thought that was really cool. I also saw another thing too, kind of futuristic. They were watching documentaries on like futuristic cars, flying cars, and they were chatting about it and stuff. That's just different than bingo and, those things. One other thing that I really love is two of my communities do, they give back to the community by either knitting blankets for the pet shelters. So the dog shelters, all of that, they will do the knitting and they like chat and they have tea and they just make them and it's super cool. I also have a community that does like your plastic bags you get from Walmart or your grocery stores. They were making mats for the homeless out of them, which I thought were just so cool. And that was actually even memory care helping because it was so simple to tie the bags together. So cool stuff like that. I mean, it's more than just bingo, crafts.
Yeah.
We hear a lot of that. So we always tell families like, look beyond the bingo and the crafts and the beads. Like that's all good stuff. But to watch them really just use their brains, and sometimes they don't even realize it's an activity. It's just a really fun time to be together and they're stimulating and it's just good for their whole health. But I love stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives them purpose, right? I mean, we all need purpose in life. We wake up in the morning, what we do, whether it be senior placement, whether it's just our family or something else, but you need purpose. I mean, it's sad when people wake up in the morning and they don't know what in the world to do. They got nothing to do and don't care about life. And we don't want seniors to get there, right? I mean, just because they might be 85 years of age doesn't mean they're going to pass away that year. They might live to be 100 something, right? It might be another 15 years, could be a couple of years, but we want them to have the most productive life possible. So these activities I love because what you're talking about, knitting and doing these different things, engages the mind and gets them involved. And, to your point of contributing to others or giving back, even I saw a community do this once where they did something like the knitting or putting stuff together. I'm not really sure what they were putting together, but they were actually going to give it back to the community. And, it's just a beautiful thing. But before we get into the negatives, I want to show an article that might be shocking for a lot of people, shocking for me. This is by no way are we trying to slam CCRCs. Now, if you don't know what a CCRC is, it's continuing care for retirement communities. It's basically when they move into a community and they have independent, they got assisted living, memory care, and they got a skilled nursing facility all within the same community, right? It might not be the same building, but the same property. So, and they have a buy-in, and that buy-in, I've seen it as low as 75,000, but Brittany, you've seen as high as what, 500,000, I think you said one time.
500,000, yeah. 500,000 is pretty the average for both of my markets.
Yeah, I've got a really good nonprofit CCRC in my area, and they're always full. And well, the other two are full too, but there's some advantages to a nonprofit. But here, this lady, this was back in 2020, so it wasn't yesterday, but she moved to this community back in 2020. She sold her house. You can see down here. She sold her home for $838,000, and she had a required $945,000 as an entry fee. Well, this company, Harborside, went bankrupt 3 times. And now it looks like she's only going to get maybe a third of her money back. And the reason we're bringing this up is this could be a negative, right? It's a negatives out there. People hear horror stories of what happens in communities sometimes. It could be as people getting abused, unfortunately, things like that. But then they hear stories like this, and they're a little bit gun shy. They're gun shy of putting their money down. For me personally, and this is not any negative towards CCRCs, I had a conversation with one of our students this morning about this, and they agreed. I'd be more prone to have that money if I sold my house, right, like she did for $838,000. I'd rather put that in a different account and utilize that money for my retirement. Like that was me, for instance. This is what I would do. And say it's my wife and I, and what we had left, and we sold our house. I would not put that all into a community all up front. I'd have that in a separate account, have somebody managing that account, because I'd probably be of age where I wouldn't be able to juggle funds and things like that. So maybe one of my kids doing that for me. But then paying a community $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, whatever. And then you just got a little more freedom there. So I wanted to bring that up because as we get into the negatives, Brittany, here's the negatives. And there's a bunch of them, just like the positives. But the three big ones looks like is cost and hidden fees, quality of care, and food and dining. I have to be honest with you. We'll get to the cost and hidden fees first, but I can't wait to get that food and dining because that one actually surprised me. I don't know. It seemed like you kind of get what you get. But about cost and hidden fees, Brittany, speak to that a little bit. Do you see any hidden fees that people just don't realize they're going to have to pay when they go into an assisted living community?
I think the main hidden fee they might be referring to is more so the levels of care and how the care can fluctuate so much. Many families that I talk to or that I work with, and maybe to the community's fault as well, are not really transparent about what the max of those fees could be. We have communities that might start at $4,000 a month, and to some families, it's a very doable cost, all the way up to $15,000 a month when you start adding care and as needs change. So that's the biggest thing that I think they're talking about. Also could be things like community fees, that one-time community fee. Maybe they don't understand that fully, or it's not described correctly that it's not refundable. But I think the levels of care cost and the extra fees on that are the biggest hidden fee in senior living. And I'm not faulting the communities, but I do know a lot of them don't like to talk about how they come up with those the tiered prices. Yeah. They're not very transparent on point systems on how they come up with those numbers. So I do think it's a very gray area for a lot of families. And I can tell you, I've moved people out of communities that have called me. They didn't use me to move into these said communities, and they are a level of care place, and they are moving because of the fact it's just gotten too much. And many times we're able to move them out of a level of care place to an all-inclusive community, and it worked just fine. So I really think that's the biggest hidden fee.
Yeah. And to your point about the community fees, you guys, it's kind of like a deposit. It's like a first month. Typically in assisted living, you cannot do that. But to get around it, so it's a community fee, like it's a buy-in to the community. And when I used to work for that assisted living community, Brittany, we pretty much were double. So if you're moving in, let's say 4,000, I'm kind of dating myself because I don't know if you can move too many places at 4,000, but that's kind of where we were at the time. So if you were moving in at 4,000, the community fee was right about $4,000. And we didn't advertise that. We didn't tell people about it. We'd get them in for the tour, and it's almost kind of like that's what's expected. So, but one day I asked the leadership, like, how do we determine a community fee and what is it used for? Because I got started asking those questions. Again, I was only in the community one day a week, but when I was there, sometimes people would ask, well, what is that used for? Why I got to pay for an extra $4,000? And here's the explanation that was given to me. And I'm not saying this is for every community. I'm not saying every community uses this explanation. But what leadership told me was that, hey, we've got to go in there and we've got to repaint the walls maybe and replace the carpet, things like that. And I'm like, so in essence, we're charging the next person for what the other person did to the room. So because the carpets got worn over time, maybe, or things got written on walls, maybe someone was there, maybe a crayon or something. So you got to repaint the walls. So we're going to charge the next person. But that's kind of the explanation. Well, that's the exact explanation they told me to say to our community. I'm not sure if that's every community out there, but that is a hidden fee, the community deal. Also, another hidden fee is inflationary costs, every year. but also a lot of these communities will give you a 60-day notice and they can raise the rents. So be careful if you're looking at a community. Let's just use easy math at $5,000 and you're going in and 5,000 is maxing you out. I mean, that you can't go a penny more than 5,000. I would be a little more cautious to go into that community because any sort of increase at all, mom has another ADL, she moves up another level where they go, a point system, or they do these brackets where they got tier A, tier B, tier C, and 3 ADLs are here, and we get to 4 to 6, it costs that much, or inflationary costs. Mom's going to be out of the game. She's going to have to move somewhere. So be careful of that. The quality of care, I kind of get, but man, 18% of that pie. Is it people just don't research or ask the right questions? Because we're going to get into some probing questions in a minute. It's really going to help you out. But is this because people don't ask the right questions that the community, their expectations are too high for care? I mean, what is that, Brittany?
I think it's mostly expectations. I think it's a couple variables. I would say it's expectations from families. I do think I've done some research on people that are waiting longer to move into assisted living. So their care needs are very high when they move in. So that could have something to do with it too. Again, just expectations. It's not one-on-one care, which we all wish we could have one-on-one care for our loved ones. I do also think it's the communities accepting residents that might not necessarily be the best fit for them, whether it be because of staffing issues or just many things why it might not be a good fit. So I think it's probably a couple factors that go into that. But I'm not surprised by this. I would say my biggest complaint in senior living is the quality of care.
Wow. And let's get to the last one on this pie, because this is like splits right down the middle. 15% is food and dining. I thought that was really high. I mean, I know the food's not going to be Ruth Chris. It's not going to be, maybe if you're like Cheesecake Factory, it's not going to be that quality. I know, but I would kind of expect it to be more on a cafeteria level, right? Wherever you're going, maybe a Golden Corral if you got one of those in your area or something like that. But the food and dining, I had this care home years ago because I haven't used them since. There was multiple complaints and a lot of different things I won't get into in this video. But one of it was every afternoon, she just fed the seniors cold sandwiches, cold cuts, every day, and they had a very, very light breakfast. And then the dinner wasn't anything to write home about, I guess, either. So I had numerous complaints about that. So I get that. So I don't know if I know things are tight, profit margins are lower. If people are trying to cut costs, I would encourage the communities, if you're trying to cut costs, do not cut in the food and the dining. I get it, business sense. They go, okay, we already got these people in the community. We're trying to get others into the community. So let's just kind of chinch on the food a little bit. However, when you do that, that word spreads like wildfire, right? It gets all around the community. People, community like your city, and people begin to talk about, man, I don't know, the food there is just not real good. My wife and I just went to a restaurant yesterday, Brittany, and I'd never been. She's been one time with a friend. And we were going to some other restaurant, and she just used the power of persuasion on me. And she was like, hey, you make a left here and right, let's go check that restaurant out. I was like, yeah, sure. I was like, what do they serve? I immediately want to know what's on the menu, because there's certain styles of food I don't like, and there's a lot of things she loves. So I'm kind of picky when it comes to that. So she began to tell me. So we went in, and before we were walking up to the restaurant, rather, and there's some people waiting. I said, oh my gosh, there's people waiting. She goes, oh yeah, there's usually people almost around the corner of this building to get in. I was like, what is special about this place? And so you get there, and the menu is already in your hand when you get up there, and when you're waiting in line, you order. The customer service is impeccable. The food was off the chart. It was fantastic. And I would just encourage communities to do that, because my question was, how does this business always has people outside? Now, we went like 3:00 in the afternoon. We went between lunch and dinner. So going between lunch and dinner, you would think there'd be no crowd, and there still was a crowd, and there were still people waiting in line. You think I'm at Starbucks or something. This is a full-blown restaurant. So I don't know. Have you heard any complaints about communities that are just not up to par when it comes to the food?
I don't get a lot of this, actually. We've done lunch tours and stuff, and overall, I worked in the food and dining at a large senior living community, and I mean, we had pretty good stuff. So I don't get a lot of food and dining complaints, hardly ever. So that's an interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like to your point about because we would do that too, right? You invite people in for tours, and sometimes you invite them in for a lunch. Well, if you're going to do that and your food stinks, that's going to kill the deal. I mean, you should have it anyway. So I was really surprised about that. So let's get into these 5 probing questions, Brittany, because I promised the audience that we would do that. So let's get into that a little bit. But 5 powerful probing questions. These are questions that you should ask if you are a loved one, a family member of a loved one, a senior that's going into a community, or a senior placement agent. You want to ask these questions. These are not how much does it cost? What is the care like? Stuff like that. These are really good questions. Number 1, ask the community, how do you handle a resident who begins to decline? Physically, mentally, or behaviorally? Ask them. Now, I'm not sure if the marketing director is going to be able to answer that question, especially if he or she just started yesterday. Like, I'll use me as an example. When I just started that community, let's say, and I was only there for a week, there's a lot of things I didn't know. And if you asked me that question, I'd be like, let me go ask the nurse. Let me go get somebody else. But how important is that, Brittany, to know how to handle a resident who begins to decline? Because everybody's going to decline. I call it graduation, but I know it's decline, right? And so, but everybody in life, including myself, I mean, that's why I'm wearing these little things today, because your eyes are declining, right? Everything in life in your body is declining. But how do you handle it?
I mean, a couple reasons why you want to ask that is, number 1, to make sure, like we said, the complaints for quality of care. So making sure that as they decline, they can meet those needs. So that the loved one is definitely cared for, and then family is at peace with their choice of where they decided to place their loved ones. Also, how the longevity of the residents staying there. So it's a big question on, are they going to give your family a notice to move to another level of care if they're declining so far physically, mentally, or behaviorally? So that's a really good thing to know. Another complaint that I hear is, they asked my loved one to leave after 2 months. They asked them to leave after 2 weeks, those type of things. So it's really important that as a family, and if you're working with a placement agent, that they know, what is their level of care and how much can they provide? And if they're declining, what is their protocol for helping that person?
Yeah. And number 2, this will be very important. Write this one down, you guys. Screenshot it if you're on your phone, or if you're watching TV and you got your phone. Can you walk me through what a bad day looks like and how your team handles it? Okay. Because when you go into a tour, everything's hunky-dory. We talked about a 3-ring circus. We talked about everything. You're putting your best foot forward, all that stuff. But everybody has a bad day. Me, Brittany, anybody included, especially residents as well in the assisted living community. So ask them very specifically, what does a bad day look like here? When my dad is having a bad day, maybe it's maybe he's just depressed, or maybe he yells a lot, or whatever it may be, but there's a bad day he's going through. How does your team handle it? How do you think, Brittany, they should handle? I know it's kind of a blanket question because there's a lot of different things can go on, but as a team, for caregivers, one thing I was thinking about, let me phrase it this way, because one thing I was thinking about is caregivers communicating one with another. They fill out charts, right? And the nurse oversees this, and at least the community I work for, they oversee the communication. But they would need to talk with each other. And because as a caregiver, and I'm not a caregiver, but as a caregiver, you can't handle resident A just like resident B and just like resident C. They're all different individuals, and you need to treat them as individuals. But anyway, what's your suggestions on that?
I think just like you said, communication and teamwork, that's going to be huge. If they're short staffed that day, if one of the staff members is not having a great day, or 5 residents are not having a great day, they're going to have to communicate and work together. A team that can do that is going to blow every other team out of the water, and the residents will get good care. So if you hear things like, obviously, if they've had longevity in their building, they know the routine, they know how to handle bad days. If they have some really good leadership that's not going to just sit behind their desk, but actually come out on the floor and be a part of that bad day and really help. So there's a lot of things they can do, but just teamwork from leadership, the director of nursing, to even the executive director, to even the dining staff can really help with a bad day.
Absolutely. Number 3, what's your staff turnover rate in the last 12 months? And how do you support staff retention? This is going to be a sore subject. This is going to be one you may not get a straight answer. You may get answered. They just kind of dance around the question a little bit. Well, we've had a couple people leave because they got better opportunities, or they moved to a different industry, blah, blah, blah. But you really want to do a deep dive into that, because I think, Brittany, is residents really get attached sometimes to caregivers, and caregivers get attached to certain residents. I mean, I just talked to somebody the other day that she was helping me out. It was actually through a phone situation. We're ordering these tablets for TSL and all that stuff. So it was AT&T. And this girl, she was around 37, 38 years of age. She used to be a caregiver. And she went on to tell me this whole story about, oh my gosh, there was a certain resident that I just thoroughly enjoyed, loved him to pieces. It was amazing. But they moved me from him because they wanted somebody else to be with them as well and make sure, you know, that I'm loving on other residents as well. But, you know, if you get that constant turnover, which happens in business, right? You have to understand assisted living is a business as well. So I know turnover happens in other forms of in industries, right? But Brittany, what is the negative impact does that have on a senior when they get used to a certain caregiver or caregivers that would help them, and now they got some others coming in and they don't handle him like the other person?
Yeah, I think emotionally and physically can affect them. They get attached, like you said, to each other. They get comfortable with how they help them to the bathroom, help them get dressed in the morning, help them take their medications. So I think it's also a huge transition to move to assisted living, let alone the continual transitions inside of assisted living, the new staff, the new faces. Also, they just get to know everything. They become like family. You know, even when I worked in the community, they became like my family, and you get to know them, and it just makes things more comfortable. No adult wants someone getting them dressed every morning, taking them to the bathroom, giving them insulin. Nobody wants that. So being able to be comfortable with someone and create that relationship does make a huge difference. So I think it really takes a toll on them in every which way.
Yep. And number 4, what is your protocol if a resident refuses care, medication, or meals? This is big time, right? Because seniors, they're adults, they're a human being. They may not want to eat that day or that particular time. They might refuse their medication, which would be a bad thing, right? I'm not a doctor or nurse or anything, but I get it. If not taking your medications prescribed by the doctor, you should take it. Or they refuse care. You know, maybe they're getting a shower twice a week and they're like, I don't want to shower this week, you know, or they just, you know, they want help. They need help getting downstairs, even in the elevator, go down to the dining hall. And I don't want any help today. I'm going to do it myself. They wake up, you know, they're feeling independent that day. But what is the protocol? So that's a great question to ask. And you need to be able to see their body language when they answer these questions, you guys, because when you ask this question, this is atypical from a question that somebody may ask. They just might ask, oh, okay, so you take care of my dad and you help prescribe medication and you make sure he gets down for meals. Great. All right. So you just basically told them something. They just nod their head. Yeah, absolutely. We do all 3 of those things. We'll take very good care of your dad. But when you start asking, what is your protocol if my dad refuses care, if he refuses medication, if he refuses meals, what do you do? And I want to know the answer to that question, right? So let's get to number 5, Brittany. How do you gather and act on feedback from residents and families? What's your input on that? I know a lot of these communities will have like a senior committee, which I love. We had that in the other community I used to work for, and they would get together once a week. And, you know, sometimes it was very, very good and very helpful. Other times it kind of caused chaos in the community. And the reason was there was 1 or 2 residents that were very outspoken. And they were kind of your negative Nancy's, and they were just, everything was a problem. Everything was an issue. I mean, it could just be when the doors got locked at night. Oh my gosh, locking at 8:00 at night. And my son can only get here by 8:30 and he's got to wait outside to get into the, I mean, everything was an issue, right? I mean, it could be a small, big, whatever, but what's your input on that?
I think, yeah, I think it's definitely important they do this. I see a lack in this sometimes in communities. So the ones that do really good at this do really good at getting the feedback and making changes. I see that communities do like the care plan meetings with families, 30 days in, 60 days in, 90 days in. That's a really good time for them to express their emotions and feelings on how the care is going and how the community is going. So yeah, it's huge. If they don't take the complaints and do something about them, it boils over and just gets worse and worse. And then you have a bigger problem. So how they do this and how often do they gather feedback from the residents and the families?
Absolutely, guys. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this video today. We really appreciate you being here. And again, if you want to know more about what Brittany does, what I do, and what other students do from our community and from 35 different states across the country, just click the link down below and schedule a consultation call with us, or watch the free webinar, or get the 3-day recorded workshop. And as I promised you, I'll have more information about that whole how to get a paying client in 12 hours, meaning I work 2 hours a day for 6 days in an area that I've never done business with. I don't know anyone there in terms of the communities, and I'll walk you through all of that. But hey, until next time, God bless.